So, hi, I am joined today on our next Leadership Series interview by Kerri O'Neill, who is Chief People Officer at Ipsos UK and Ireland. Hi, Kerri, and thanks for joining us.
Hi, John. Excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, we're just going to have a little chat today about all things AI and human. Ipsos obviously is a business that your product is human insight and judgment. So, in the world of AI reshaping how people work and how people think, how does that impact what you do at Ipsos and how does it impact your particular role?
I think what's the most amazing thing about Ipsos, so I've been at Ipsos for over 2 years now, but Ipsos is over 50-year-old business. And when you look back at the growth of Ipsos, John, over that period, actually its biggest jumps come at the same time as when there are the big tech advancements. So, Ipsos started largely with a face-to-face interview process, stopping you in the street with the clipboard, knocking on the door. You got then the telephone. We've then got the internet, and now we've also got AI. So I'm actually excited about what technology and the human interface does for us in terms of our knowledge and understanding about how the world works. And that, of course, sits at the heart of what Ipsos tries to bring to the world, is the voice of what's going on in lots of different spheres and the opinion. And so AI is actually a really exciting technology for us, which is why we adopted AI super early for all our members of staff. So very keen to share a little bit more of our story with you today, John.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, please feel free to tell us what you guys have been doing. Let's start there. I'm always keen to hear how people are adopting and embedding AI within their own organizations. It's how other people understand what they can do.
So often when we talk about the adoption, I know we often start with the technology. We're training everyone to get to grips with a new technology. But what's actually interesting about what Ipsos has done around this is it started with a philosophy. And this has really helped, I think, for people to understand and embrace and experiment and be curious, because they know the frame by which we want to work with this technology moving forward. So the philosophy is very straightforward, very simple to understand and remember. And it's the 3 T's. It's trust, transparency, and truth. And so we then say that, we are trusted. That is that's absolutely core to our brand. So the way in which we use AI cannot break that trust, i.e., we cannot use AI to shortcut something that then does not mean that the data is valid. Everything around what we do is making sure it's statistically valid, that it's robust, that it's based on genuine evidence. And so almost this philosophy about it, if this does not create trust, then we will not do it, or we will not do it to the speed by which, it's potential. Transparency for us is all about making sure that we understand what the technology is doing at all times, so that we can understand how an algorithm works. We can audit an algorithm all the way through, that we understand. And transparency, I think, also comes into the human layer, John, that we're honest about what we're trying to do with AI. We're honest about what it can do, what it can't do. And so transparency really plays through. And the last one is about truth. So for us, it's really important that AI still grounds in the real experiences and what people say. So there's lots of potential with AI to summarize, for example, lots of people's verbatim comments. And we want to make sure that if there's any insights or summaries or conclusions made, that it grounds back into what people actually said. I think we've all probably experienced something with AI where it's like, oh, Kerri, you're the most amazing person that's walked the planet, kind of thing. There's a layer of some of the AIs. It's very flattering and lovely. But if we were, we need to make sure that anything that we produce or say is absolutely grounded in a truth. So those 3 philosophical tenets lay at the heart of how we've started to approach AI, and we laid that out even before we kind of got to these are the tools, here's the prompting piece. But then just around some of that training, because I know that's of a lot of interest areas, a lot of organizations are thinking, how on earth do I do this? A couple of things that Ipsos has done. First of all, we gave AI tools to all staff members, irrespective of role and geography. And in part, that was because we recognize that this is going to be a really vitally important technology. I mean, you wouldn't not give someone the cloud, you wouldn't not give someone the internet, you wouldn't not give someone electricity, which are all other sort of general purpose technologies. And so we've given everyone internet access. Gosh, you can tell my age now, John, but we've given everyone AI access, and we've trained everyone in the basics of what is an LLM, how do you prompt properly. You have to go back around this a bit because we've all gone through the phase of just basically doing a slightly expanded search request, haven't we? So instead of just asking, what should I buy next week? We've asked AI, what should I buy for the next 10 weeks kind of thing. Well, that's still actually still not the type of prompt. And actually what I'm seeing now is as we advance on a few years, a lot of people and a lot of organizations, and this is something we're toying with at the moment, we haven't gone there yet. A lot of organizations now are helping people to even create things like digital twins or second brains, as I've heard it being. And that's almost prompting at a very advanced level. And it's just setting AI up around you. And I think this is the next really exciting area of AI adoption. Like, how do we go from just using it to offload activities? How do we use it to make us a little bit quicker to actually how do we shape AI around us? And that's the augmentation strategy. And we have literally just announced only in the last few weeks a new strategy around augmentation, John. So exciting times ahead.
There's so much of what you just said that I really love. Firstly, the philosophy, your guiding principles by which you as an organization use it. You've used the power of three, a very, very human behavioral aspect of how delivering a message that I think is really interesting. I speak to quite a lot of people in the market, and I've only spoken to a handful that have actually used a similar thing, kind of setting out those, you call it philosophy, I would call it guiding principles. I think it's really important, especially if you're in a larger organization, for everyone to really understand what the organizational take is on it and how best to use it. I also loved your point, Anna, around the AIs flatter you. I've definitely turned that off on mine. I've trained it to not do that. Yeah, I mean, I'm a person who likes directness and straight to the point, so it just didn't really work for me. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to create that second brain. I've got a chief of staff I use at work. I'm trying to train to be proactive rather than reactive.
Yeah.
I'm trying to use it in personal life as well. I think it's fascinating, the possibilities that we've got here. What I love most about what you were saying is kind of the link back to human involvement and augmentation of human behaviour rather than replacement of human behaviour, which is what we talk about a lot at aibl. So this new thing you've just released in the past few weeks, are you able to talk about that?
Absolutely. This is in the public domain. We've talked to our investors and our staff about this. Our strategy over the next few years, we're calling ourselves Augmented Ipsos. It fits nicely with AI as well. And it's exactly that. So how do we use AI to be an even better version of ourselves for our clients? So if we're the best we can be a better partner to our clients. And I think that reflects back into our lives as well. So if I can use AI properly as a working mom, as, someone who, does other things outside of work, if I can use AI to improve that about myself, then I can do those things better. And that, to me, the augmentation element and potential and opportunity of AI is the one I think is genuinely exciting. I mean, yes, there's some productivity gains that are out there. I'm sure there are some people out there very excited about what those could look like, etc. But those are short-term wins. Once if an organization thinks, oh, okay, I can use AI to cut heads by X amount. Well, you can only do that once in your strategy. However, augmentation has ongoing potential benefits and ongoing value pools that can be opened up. We have not scratched the surface of the innovation potential in most of our organizations, big and small. And I do think I'm a real evangelist about how AI is, I think, more important there than in some of those short-term productivity cuts. I've been in HR for over 2 decades. I've seen the cycle where we kind of got to in the 80s, 2000s, where we just growing organizations, cutting them, growing organizations, cutting them, is a really awful hamster wheel to be in as a staff member, as an investor in those companies, leaders in those companies. And so I sort of think that your imagination is probably not as wide as it could be if that's the only thing you're excited about potentially happening with your company with AI, is that you can cut a little bit of headcount off it. I think there is way more that's possible here with AI. There's some risks as well. I think, we can't be sort of utopian about this. There are some very genuine risks and some genuine things we need to think about, which is why I'm also a fan of a more philosophical approach. I know we don't often use that word in business. We kind of think, oh, that feels long-term and slow and idealistic. And I think the reality is that if we don't approach this a little bit philosophically, we're going to end up with making some quite bad short-term decisions. And I think, we're early days of this technology. Giving ourselves some time to think about it is what smart leaders are doing, smart boards are doing, smart organizations are doing, big and small, founders, entrepreneurs, people thinking about it properly, I think will be the winners out the gate.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with that. I have to say, I absolutely love the play on words, augmented Ipsos and AI. I think that's very, very clever. Now, you touched on there, obviously, your role in what I would call the people function HR in organizations over the past couple of decades. And what we found fascinating at aibl is how, when we started on our journey, we were talking to people in lots of different leadership roles, but we weren't really talking to HR. And what came through our advisory board and what came through all the conversations is that actually, in quite a lot of organizations and in quite a lot of thinking, AI adoption and implementation within a business has become more of a people and HR challenge than it has a tech challenge. And so that's why we've launched the Workforce Live event that you're speaking at. And it's why we started talking to a lot more people like yourself, just to try and understand how you think about the interplay between looking after a business and the people within that business, and how you then bring them on that more tech journey. And I've heard some people, including agents in organizational structures and things like that, and it feels like we're entering quite an interesting world.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is without a shadow of a doubt the most exciting and genuinely transformational technology advancement that I've certainly seen in my career, as starting from the late 90s, 2000s. And we had, when I first entered the world of work, we were in the dot-com bubble phase, if those who remember that. And one of my first jobs at Norwich Union was sort of, can you train the underwriters and actuaries how to use the internet? And it was totally, it was totally age biased. I was a young person, so as I assumed, we often do assume that young people know tech better, and they probably do. But what that very first experience of work was, you cannot divorce the major technology from the culture, from the organization. They always are present, right? Even getting Excel, when Microsoft launched that's transformed so many jobs. And we hardly talk about technology's role in the world of work, but it's always there. It's always been there. And so I think for me, it feels incredibly natural that the people function is involved in technology transformation. I'm a little bit surprised how surprised people are that HR are involved in this. So we've obviously kept our interest and involvement in technology change a little bit quiet, but absolutely everything makes or breaks in an organization on whether your people and your culture and your strategies about how the work is actually going to get done evolves. And I think we're entering into quite an exciting time because of this potential for augmentation. I mean, literally, there are founders that I'm speaking to that are like, I've got a team of 10 and none of them are human. And it's like, wow, because I've woken up, I've asked Claude Code to build me this job description of person doing it. Off it's gone and is doing it. And I think as I was talking to earlier, there are some risks and some things that we need to think quite deeply about. And when work can be done literally by anything, we need to think much harder then about, well, what is it that we are going to commit to have our people do? Without a shadow of a doubt as well, if we think commercially, people is often one of the biggest costs of business, or investment, depending on what side. But if you, just take our prevailing economic language, it's a big outlay. And so we do have to think with more care about making sure that we are extracting all the right value, we're doing the right things for our businesses. This does put pressure onto people where their skill set maybe lives around what AI can now do very easily. This is going to put pressure on people who are maybe not fully giving us all their talents and opportunities and strengths and things that are unique about them. Because I genuinely think that a lot of people have so much more to give. And what if AI gives us the opportunity to see more of that? And the value in which people create for our businesses doesn't look so much like getting the admin done, getting this done, getting that done. The value of that person being in our business is what's the relationships they can create, what's the creativity that they bring, what's the, that it means that our business can go faster because I can have AI doing this and I can have my human beings doing that. And so I think our horizons really need to also expand around what our businesses are doing. I threw a lot at you there, John.
No, I mean, the reason why I'm smiling so much is because you're basically saying exactly what I've been saying to other people for what feels like a long time.
I've just been stalking you and taking notes about what you say, John. That's what my strategy is here.
No, I mean, I've been saying that the augmentation of human behavior allows humans to then be more creative, more strategic,
Yeah.
and do the things that machines can't do, such as build relationships, which is exactly what you've just said. So basically, I couldn't agree with you more. So in one of your posts that you put on LinkedIn recently, you talked a little bit about this and you used the phrase cognitive surrender, which you touched on earlier. So that's where people accept what an AI has given them as fact, as truth, without questioning them, without checking whether those outputs are wrong.
Yeah.
What do you think we need to do as business leaders to help train and educate people and to try and ensure that doesn't become a risk in our organisations?
I do think this is quite a genuine risk, and I'm really pleased to see more of the academic studies that have come out. There's been a recent one by Wharton, some professors at Wharton. It's called Thinking Fast and Thinking Slow and Thinking with AI. I posted this study because I liked it so much, and it puts some academic rigor behind what I've been seeing and talking about and saying as well. And that is actually, I think it's quite good that the early models of AI were a little bit ropey, right? Because I think all of us, or there is a tendency for us to be quite wowed by technology and to just assume it's amazing and it does all the right things. But of course, technology has been designed by humans. And some of this is also quite new and early. So I'm almost pleased that there were some quite ropey answers. And, we were calling it hallucinations, weren't we, a couple of years ago? And I actually think that's quite good because it made us a little bit skeptical about what these very magical large language models do. And they are just statistical pattern spot and modeling models when you get to the bottom of it. There isn't a human brain that has all the different connective factors that a human brain has working. It might not, we might not be able to quite go at the pace of AI, but our thinking is more complicated than what the LLMs do. And it created a skepticism that I think is incredibly healthy. And we must always remember that AI is not human. And I know we all, there's been a big thing of organizations putting names on AI. I'm not for or against that as such. I think there's a different reason why people do that, a different adult. But at the end of the day, AI is not a human. I know there's all the talk about super intelligence and, etc., but we're not at that stage yet. And one of my favorite things that I've been saying over the last 2 years is let's not forget that one of the biggest supercomputers that we have sits behind your very own eyes. And that supercomputer compounds when you get people together and it creates connections between those brains. There's even more spectacular, actually, and something that AI is definitely struggling with at the moment. And so this is a vital thing to remember about this technology. We learn all the time. Most technologies really do have a dark side. How long as a society we spot that, start to regulate for that, etc., I think depends slightly on the technology. We didn't spot that social media would be as risky for us in the early days, potentially. I do think we are, well, fingers crossed, we are at a good level of understanding that not everything AI gives us is true. So firms that are really helping people to remember this, to fact check, ask it different questions, to actually click on the sources and check that that's what it actually connects to is some really important behavior, not to slow us down hugely, but just to make sure that you're not going to embarrass yourself by putting something out into the world that's not true or accurate. And at Ipsos, this is something that's really important to us, back to our philosophy around truth and trust. We need to pay even more attention to that. And so cognitive surrender, this idea that you just believe everything it says, is a bit like, now if everyone phones you up and says, John, can you give me your credit card number? I'm DHL. And, we have to be more careful than that. And I really think that firms and organizations have a responsibility to make sure that, don't just assume everyone knows that. We've trained all our staff in what LLMs are and what they look like, and we're clear that they are not human beings. They don't have that same thing happening. We need to do that for them. Not every organization necessarily is doing that, but I think they should. And I think ultimately at some point we'll probably see some regulation in this space, although that is probably a long time off, but we should get ahead of that as responsible business leaders.
It's really interesting. In our conversations, the hallucinations and the less than good outputs that some of the AI models have kicked out over time, some of the people we've spoken to, that stopped them from implementing it.
Yeah.
There's a mistrust there because you can't trust the output that comes out of it, that it's a waste of time to try and even bother using it to help your business in whatever way it might be. And then the other thing you said was an AI isn't a human, which obviously I completely agree with. It's not, it's a machine. However, what other people have said to me is that in order to get the best out of AI, and this is specifically for LLMs and the way that we treat them,
Yeah.
and agents as well, you need to treat them like a human. So you wouldn't just onboard a new person and say, oh, go and do this thing over there, without giving them training materials, context, conversations about what it is that you want to do, your style, the output you expect, all of this kind of stuff. And so when you're talking to the AI, a lot of people say you should actually treat it like a human, even though it isn't. So I'm interested to know what you think about those
Yeah.
two points.
No, I do agree with you. I'd go a little bit further. First of all, just on your first point, I think it's a shame those early models have put people off forever, because actually it's improved hugely. Like, it's almost you can't recognize an AI today, even one you don't pay for, are free, but the other models that we do pay for, they are exponentially better than what they put out even 2 years ago. And it blows my mind to think what might be out there in the market in a couple of years' time too. So without a shadow of a doubt, I think it's a healthy caution. It's a healthy curiosity about what it's come up with, a healthy degree of skepticism, not a neuroticism about what it's producing is probably the way to go here. Just like not going to slam down the phone to everyone who rings just because you think it's a scammer. It's a healthy, balanced skepticism, not something that's going to completely turn you off this technology, because without a shadow of a doubt, we do all need to learn about AI and to use it. It is going to be one of the single biggest transformative technologies that we certainly see within our lifetimes and those of our children. On your second point, I need us, I think, to actually go further. So not just to give it the instructions you'd give a human. I've heard that too. I've had that advice. Think of it like an intern or a graduate. You need to give it but let's not also forget, this is an area that I spend a lot of time on, is we forget as human beings how much our cultures and environments and how much we ingest and know through things that aren't even spoken to us about. We are our culture, our environment, our surroundings, the people we interact with, even at different relationship levels, are giving us huge amounts of information that we contextualize and use to operate. So stats are, quite well out there that, we take on like something like 2 billion data points in any given day. Now, we're not necessarily cognitively processing them at the front of our brain, but they're going in and happening. So actually, I always say you have to go even further with AI, not just talk to it like a grad. You have to tell it more about the context. And those people who are doing sort of creating second brain digital twins type training, I think what they're saying to me is it's actually quite surprising how much you have to say to tell an AI to get it. You have to tell it your hopes, fears, dreams, visions, your thoughts on tone, communication, timing, style, and actually I think what we're trying to do there, John, is fill in the gaps for AI around some of those things that actually we forget as humans come to us through more cultural, environmental signals for AI to super operate at us. And that's what I sort of meant at the beginning about learning to prompt. I think I don't feel like I'm some sort of master prompter here, but learning all the time. You have to give AI more and more and more, I think, for it to really work for you. And so that is a different skill set to what most of us have had. So all of us, no matter where we are in terms of stage and age, we've got to go on a learning journey with AI without a shadow of a doubt. And everyone I meet, friends, family, co-workers, peers, we've got to all learn more about AI. We've got to keep sharing what we're learning too. We've got to keep understanding what this looks like in order for us to be really competent at using this technology to its fullest.
Couldn't agree more. Well, look, we're nearly out of time, Kerri, so I'm going to ask you one final question. It's a question I always end on with everybody. Imagine you are a CEO or a leader in an organization who runs a mid-market business and you're watching this back. You don't have an AI strategy and you have a team that's a mix of enthusiastic and resistant. What's the one piece of advice you would give them, or the one thing you'd advise them to do first?
I think, don't just say to people, go play and experiment with AI. I mean, yes, they'll do that. That's quite nice. It was very handy us saying to people, did you know you can get, your child's revision schedule out of AI? That caused the most sort of logins to AI for the first time. And when we were doing it, I think actually it's quite important to go on a learning journey together and to do some of the learning together. So don't just say to people, go and do that course on their own. Let people maybe do the course on their own with headphones and you're on the laptop, but create dialogue around what you're learning together. I think the more that we can be social learning, peer learning together, the better. And it's really well worth us doing this. I'm a big fan of Trinny Woodall, the clothes and makeup guru. I was very, very impressed. She took her whole company, which is a fast growing startup, and got lots on social media all the time. She took her whole company out for 2 days to boot camp around AI and to learn how to use it together. So they upskilled together. They learned together. No one was left behind. We've done that also in Ipsos, not quite company-wide. We are many, many multiples bigger than that. But we have created team-based experiences around learning about AI. So what that helps you do is make sure that you don't just end up with a few fast adopters over there or a few people that everyone gets to do the AI type jobs to do and then some laggards. We need substantial upgrades across all of our different firms. And this is the one technology, it's the one time where I think it's worth maybe doing some stuff out of the norm, maybe half a day out together to learn and upskill. I think that could be one of the best uses of your time, actually. And so that's what I would advise. If anyone goes and does that after hearing this, please come and tell me what you found. I'm almost certain you will guarantee a shift that you wouldn't have got if you just let everyone kind of learn and do it in a quite individualized way.
Sounds like brilliant advice to me, Kerri. Thank you so much. And thank you so much for your time and your candor and your interesting comments today. We've really appreciated it. And we look forward to hearing more from you at our Workforce Live event in a few weeks on the 6th of May.
Can't wait to be there. Can't wait to hear what other people have to share as well. So thank you, John.
Thank you very much.